Welcome to the channel, everybody. This is Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator, or shall I say, I am Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator. You tell me. Now, I'm coming in, we're following this series using the paint and paper library paint. Now, if you don't know the backstory on this one, I've got Doris the Door, which will be soon, she'll be soon going into retirement. We've got a new door on the way. I've painted Doris the Door over the last number of weeks, particularly number of weeks for people watching the video. I've been trying to see what this paint is like. It's the paint and paper library. I've had the Eggshell, I've had the Satinwood. I've now taped those off so you can see the difference between the finishes. That door currently is totally coated up in the Satinwood and the colour was Marble 3. Now, the backstory on this, I met Amy, which is my local rep for the Paint and Paper Library brand. She is also the Bradite rep, and she is also, yeah, Little Green. So, speaking to her at the Brewers event in Mansfield back in June, which seems ages ago now, she said to me, have I tried any of these paints? Never tried that one before. Bradite I really like, and you might see a tin up there. I've got a Bradite tin, an empty tin from a previous job. I like the Bradite. So far, so good. I'm liking the paint and paper library paint, albeit you've got to watch the previous video there on the Satinwood. And she says, I'll send you some paint out. So she sent me some sample tins to try out. And it is the Eggshell, the Satinwood, and now the gloss. And this is what today's video is going to be. It's going to be about glossing Doris the Door and seeing what, one, the opacity is like over that, which shouldn't be too bad because it's a very similar colour. This is Marble 5. I've got it in a paint kettle there. It's very similar. It's a pale greyish colour, so I'm not expecting the opacity to be any problem. But I want to see what the paint's like, because these are paints that, in effect, are self-priming, self-undercoating, and you can just go on with 2 coats of these. And I'll put an asterisk there, 2 coats. So long as you're going over something very similar and you prepare it and you rub it down and you dust it off, like Doris has been done, she's been nibbed down and she's been dusted off, you should be able to get away with 2 coats of this, because there are properties in there that help it adhere to surfaces that have previously been painted. Now, if you do want to do belt and braces, or as I say, bib and braces, you can get an all-surface primer in their range of paints that, if in doubt, you can always go on with that first and then bring your surface up with your top coats. And now I'm going to say to you, if you've got bare surfaces, literally bare MDFs, if you've got bare woods or even bare plaster, it might be beneficial to go in with that primer coat of an all-surface primer first. If it needs an extra coat of that, feel free to do that if you think it requires it, and then you can finish off with these finished paints, which is the Eggshell or the Satinwood or the gloss. Now, as I've said before, if you're following this series of videos, this is, shall I say, one of these paints that you can use ceiling walls and woodwork. If you want to gloss on a ceiling, you could do. That's entirely up to you, but they are a bit of a, let's call it a universal paint. They are very much a paint that you can use on virtually anything. They can go onto metal, so if you've got radiators to paint, you can use them on radiators. Now, I'm going to be very impressed to see what this is like, because it is a water-based finish. I've got a feeling this is round about an 80% gloss level. I'll have to check. I'll put it there when I edit this video to say what the website says for the actual finish level. What we've seen on the Eggshells around about the 10, 15 to 20s, and then the Satinwoods have been around about that 30, 35. Now, that will depend on how many coats you put on. Don't skimp, don't just think, oh, I've put an undercoat stroke all surface primer on, I can get away with 1 coat of any of these. It's always best to go with 2 coats of the finish, because we are moving on to water-based paints. We're not like of undercoat and oil gloss of, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, where you just put an undercoat on and then 1 coat of gloss. Water-based paints are slightly different. That said, water-based paint, you'll find touch dry, 30 minutes to an hour, and recoat time is 4 hours. Now, if you are looking at the eggshells and the Satinwoods, they are 3 to 4 hours, but the gloss does say on the back 4 hours. Now, what I would be saying to you is, as I'm going to be doing, I'm going to get a coat on today and I'm going to come back tomorrow. So it's going to have easily a good 12 hours to 18 hours before I put a second coat on. So I'm going to get the paint out. I'm going to start painting with it. I'm going to tell you what I think the feel of the paint's like. This is straight out the tin. I won't be thinning it, even though you probably could do if you wanted to. But I want to be true to what the paint is, and let's see what it's like straight out the tin. I've already got it out. I've got a paint kettle going. I'm keeping with the same brushes. I'm doing these, I don't want to say experiments, but these sample doors. I'm using the X Series Maverick, which I've been finding very nice for applying paint. It's a little bit firmer bristle than the S Series, which I do like. The S Series seems very nice when I'm on jobs. If you're finishing off with windowsills or something like that and you want to get the paint on and do a nice soft finish over windowsills or even doors, they're actually a really nice brush to use. It's a slightly different filament to the X Series. The X Series is a little bit different, and I'm going to do what my t-shirt says, got to sniff the bristle. It's more of a case that I'm actually sniffing the paint. There's a nice sweet smellish to that gloss. It's quite nice. Not that I want to drink it or eat it, but that brush has been very nice. It is an oval. If you don't know what these brushes are, please have a look on videos there. It's a ferrule going all the way around in one. There's no join on it. It is a one-piece ferrule. Very nice handle to hold. A little bit shorter than what the S Series is, but all in all, a nice brush to apply paint on, something like this. So let's bring the camera in and let's just see what this paint's like to apply. I'll give you my first initial thoughts to it, and then I'll go away, come back, and then we'll see what it's like with that second coat on. Let's not make it too big a video, this. We don't need an hour, do we? No. Right, I've moved you across. The eggshells there, the Satinwood's there. What I'll be doing is leaving those panels exposed. I will be coming down the munting rail there, the top style, the mid style, as you should be painting a door. But how I'll be starting is doing the mouldings first and the panels on the panels and the mouldings that haven't been painted, and then I will paint the door in the traditional way and the Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator way, how it should be done. Never start a door from the bottom and work up. Always start from the top down, in effect. So you always start with your panels and your mouldings, work your way from the top down to the bottom, and then you come up to the top. What you don't want to be doing is picking up any dust, fluff, anything that's on the floor from the bottom rail. I'll put my foot there, just down here. You don't want to pick that up on your bristles of your brush, that you would be spreading it all over the door. Likewise, if you were using a roller, you don't want to pick up any bits, because you will spread it everywhere. Right, let's crack on. I know I can talk, but I need to tell you everything that I know about paint. Now, so far so good. This opacity isn't going to be a problem. The colour of the paint underneath me, this Marble 3 is very similar, albeit a little bit lighter. I think the colour that I'm putting on the Marble 5 is, I don't know whether you can see it, there's a little bit of a tingy pink to it. So we're not going in with a white. It'd be very nice if my rep Amy is watching to send me some tins of white, because white is one of the ones that a decorator always, it's really the nemesis of the decorator for the opacity of paint when we're talking about white. But so far that's looking really nice. It does feel a little bit sticky, which I'd expect it to feel, because we are a gloss paint and not something like an eggshell or a Satinwood. Now, I've said on numerous videos, there's a bit of hair there from before. I've said on numerous videos, when you are working with water-based paints, don't play about with it too much. Get it on and lay it off with the tips of the bristles. Don't apply too much paint, because you don't want it creeping on your mouldings and down at the bottom. And when you do find you've got some bristle marks going over onto the mid rail or whatever rail it is, munting rails down there, just wipe your brush down like that so there's nothing on it. Side of the brush, which is called the heel, just knock off any fatty edges, because if that dries on you as a fatty edge, you're going to find it very difficult to blend your paint into something that is a bit of a chunky, fatty creep of a paint run around the side. So that's what you've got to do. Right, I'm going in with the side, the one next to it there, doing this side moulding. I'm going to go across the top. You can probably see I'm not particularly laying it off as I'm putting this first coat on. What I want to do is get it on around the sides, get the middle panel done, and then do the finishing off, laying off on my last final sweep. So that's on. Happy with that. I'm going in with the middle panel, putting it on a bit of a crow's nest effect. The paint is going on very nice. Now, half of that battle will be I'm going over a good, decent finish, which is the Satinwood from previous. So that's to my advantage. What's going to be interesting is what this gloss level is like when it's dry. Never judge a book by its cover. Don't make assumptions while it's still drying. And I'm going to say there's a lot of TikTok painters, there's a lot of influencers out there that will show you a door that's probably water-based glossed and they're filming it while it's still wet. We want to see what it's like 12 hours later when that actual gloss has probably settled down and properly dried. So I'm true to my form on that. I will show you what it's like because I will show you a dry door. Now, I'm not going to make you endure doing any more. I'm going to leave it at that. Application wise, I'm quite happy with that. It goes on nice. As I've found really with the other paint and paper library paints, I've been quite impressed with, to say it's a paint that I've not come across before. So leave it with me. Let me finish this. I will come back tomorrow, give it a second coat, and we'll have a little bit of a conclusion on what 2 coats of gloss of the paint and paper library is like. Now, this is the architect's gloss. This is the little bit more harder wearing and durable paint. So if you're looking at the range of paints for quality, this is it. Now, I've said before, this isn't cheap paint, but quality remembered long after price is forgot. And I've always said the price of materials for the domestic painter and decorator, like we are, Beckwith Decorators, MD Beckwith Decorators, the price of materials on a job compared to labour is quite small. So if I say to you, your paint materials might be an extra 100, 200, 300 pounds, what's that when the room might be, I don't know, £2,000, £3,000 in labour? Just think about it. It's a small fraction to actually get a quality paint on a job. So I'll leave that thought with you. Give us some comments below. I will see you tomorrow and I'll crack on with this. Enjoy the rest of your day. Okie dokie everybody, I'm back. Now you saw me blending out, you know what it's like. I've got 2 coats on. So the second coat's gone on a good number of hours ago, and it's probably a couple of hours. And it's dry. Now, the first coat I got on yesterday, and I've come back today and got that second coat on. It's lovely working over a paint that's had time to properly dry off and have next day coating up is always advised, but I'd always say try and do next day coating up. Now, first things first, I'm going to say this is a water-based gloss system, and what do I think of that gloss level? Have I told you yet what I think of it? To me, this is a decent satin finish. This is what I like as a satin finish. This might be a little bit more than the usual 50-60% satin finish that I personally like. This has gone on to the 70% as a gloss. Now, to me, and I think to anybody else, they're not going to really think of this as a gloss like you think of traditional oil-based glosses. But that said, it's applied nicely. Where I'm very critical is looking at where these munting rails are and then the cross rails and blending out between the two. So you come down that munting rail, then you come across there, and if a spraggy bristle of your brush catches it or you flick it back in for blending out, you see a little bit of flashing. I'm not seeing that. I actually thought when I was applying it how well it flowed and the wet edge kept going for me. It didn't seem to be pulling, even though it feels quite a thickish paint going on. It wasn't gathering up. It wasn't feeling too sticky that I thought there was going to be some flashing marks around there. So on that note, it's all right. Going back to the actual paint, it applies like you're putting a paint on. It doesn't feel like a watery water-based paint. But be mindful, when I've washed that brush out, I'm not saying I struggled washing it out as in it's like a hybrid, but it did take a bit of washing out. So wash it and clean it out with cold water first. Increase your temperature with a little bit of warm water. And then a bit of washing up liquid doesn't go amiss. So I do get it washed out. I have got it washed out, but it wasn't as easy to wash out as what the Satinwood was or the Eggshell. But on the whole, colour wise, the opacity, it's not done bad over that Satinwood colour that we'd got there. Kind of, yeah, that's better. I'd expect this sort of colour, which I think we say it's marble 5, and I think that was marble 3. Opacity, it's gone for 2 coats. So if you have got a little bit of a off-whitey base and you've gone over with a colour like this, I'm not seeing any grinning around there. So we get a tick on the actual opacity of this colour. But to be fair, I think lots of paints would be covering opacity-wise when we've got that sort of colour, which is a bit of a, I'd say it's a bit of a grey colour, pale grey. What I would say is, Doris had been sanded down with the Merkur and I can see some skate marks. I can still see skate marks on some of these sides, these styles. So if you do look hard, I can see some sanding down scratches, which does come down to user error because really I was sanding a lot of paint off and used a bit too coarser sanding paper. So be mindful if you are sanding down, don't go with something too coarse. Stick with a bit of a used 120 grade and I don't think you'll go wrong really. Always rub down with your grain. I've got the circular Merkur, which is the orbital sanding, and I've also got the block sander, which is doing my hand like a DJ, going up and down, but there is some scratch marks that I can see on there. If you were using oil bases of 20 years ago or more, if you'd used an oil undercoat and then an oil gloss over the top, I would say that the thickness film of the paint would have lost that. But we're using water-based paint with 2025. But overall, not bad, nice to apply. Gloss level, bit disappointed with. What I would like to see is a little bit higher. If manufacturers are saying it's gloss, try and get to that 80, 85 at least. I don't want to use the word Farrow & Ball, what I've just mentioned, Farrow & Ball. Farrow & Ball are one of the designer brands that does have a decent gloss level, and it's glossier than that. So all in all, I'm going to say to you, with me experimenting and testing Eggshell, Satinwood, gloss, these two here I've been very impressed with. The Eggshell's lovely to apply. The Satinwood wasn't too bad. Opacity had a little bit of grinning issues, but as a finish, that's quite nice. I'm not a flat person, Eggshell person, but that was hiding a multitude of sins with it being a flatter finish. The more glossier you go with your paint, the more critical it will be of the surface that you're going over. But I'm going to say, Paint and Paper Library, if you've not heard of it before and you're wanting to try something a little bit different, I'm thinking this paint is really good, particularly these two. If you do go for stuff like the Eggshell, I think that's probably the one to go for your all-round flat finish, which you can use on your ceiling, your walls and your woodwork if you want, because it is an all-round paint. And all of these, remember I said at the beginning, all of these are a self-priming, self-undercoating, but if you are going over bare surfaces, what have I told you, just thin a little bit of paint down, put it on, let it soak in, let it dry, rub it down, and if in doubt, go for the all-surface primer that Paint and Paper Library do as well. I'm going to say thank you very much for everybody that's watched. Videos are coming up at the side. Those that are doing me super thanks, thank you very much. Those that are buying me a coffee, it is much appreciated because it means that YouTube don't take their commission out of that money, because buy me a coffee is totally separate. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you again for Amy for sending out these sample tins. Much appreciated. And if you're following me on this journey with Paint and Paper Library and also testing out the little green paints, what do you think of these paints? Do you prefer this or do you prefer little green? Please tell me.